Hey everyone, Ben here. Today I'm talking to Al Shalloway. Al is a prominent figure within the Agile and PMI community. He's co author of the book Design Patterns Explained and currently takes off with his Amplio University. Whether you're a consultant, trainer, or overall interested in the future of training, AI, and the application of new Agile ideas, this episode is for you. Let's start. Hello, Al. Welcome to the Stellar Work Podcast.
Hi, Benjamin. Thanks for having me here. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you for being here. You're one of the major players in the Agile community. I see you a lot on LinkedIn. I really enjoy the content that you're bringing out and the work and the material that you contributed to the community. So I was like 100% I'm going to ask him.
Well, I
And
appreciate it.
I'm very happy that you're here. Thank you so much.
Same here. Thank you. You're welcome.
For everyone who does not know you yet, could you introduce yourself a little bit?
Yeah, I've been around a long time. I got into programming, I think, in 1971 when I started college, and got into business applications in 80 after working for a while. And I was a heavy programmer up until about 96, and I built lots of applications. I was one of these 10x programmers. I really was, and a lot of that was a variety of reasons I don't need to go into, but I became a consultant more 96 to 99, or a coach under contract, and I formed Net Objectives in 99. And Net Objectives was a early agile consulting firm. We did XP, we did design patterns. I've written books, technical books, and by around 2001, though, I realized the real problem wasn't programming, it wasn't design, it wasn't how things were built, although that's where all the focus is, because it's kind of like the philosophy whoever has it last when it's late, it's their fault. So developers are always getting blamed. But I had been doing XP since 99, and in 2001, 2002, I got into Scrum because it was kind of the up and coming thing. And to be candid, I couldn't get that many people to do XP. They didn't like pairing, they didn't like test first. So I had some great success with those I could enroll in it, not so much after that. So from 99 to 2019, I was CEO, founder of Net Objectives, and we had some really good success at scale and at teams. And out of that, I built something called Flex, Flow, Lean, Enterprise Transformation. I've been into Lean since the 80s, and Theory of Constraints for a while too, and Theories of Flow. And the PMI bought my IP, and I had high hopes when I went out there in '99, but it only lasted a couple of years. I was, the tail of the big company, and the entrepreneur that, struck, rose its head, so to speak. So I left about 3 years ago, and instead of retiring, which I could, I'm 72 now, um, and my wife thought I should. I decided, well, we're all right. I could retire, but I want to really do what I think needs to happen that whenever I was working for a company, I could never do. That was true for Net Objectives. I mean, you've got people that working for you and all that. And I decided I would look to see what needed to happen. And the thing I did decide first was we needed a new type of training. We needed training over time and that's affordable. I mean, like 1/5 to 1/10 the cost of individual. There's a lot of really good training out there, but I'm talking about individual training and make it ongoing education. So in three years ago, October 21, I decided to start doing this. And I quickly found out a few things. First of all, it's a lot harder than it looks. I'd been doing some things like it, but not at this kind of scale. And the other thing was that you needed to integrate coaching. In other words, just teaching people ideas wasn't enough. They had to know how to convey that. So I've been doing this over the last 3 years. I have this thing I call Amplio University, which it's patterned after university with multiple curriculums, and it's a new type of ongoing education. It lasts 6 months. And most people re-up, actually, because it's new stuff. And that's my focus now. How do people get educated in the market so they think instead of following? That's one of the biggest problems I see. People are following. They're even told to follow to understand, and I think that's ridiculous. People have a good intuitive sense. If they've done any kind of development, they have past experience. So that's
So,
what I'm
what do
looking
you
at
what do
now.
you people educate about?
Well, I kind of cover everything because I was a trainer in SAFe, I was a trainer in Scrum, I was a trainer in XP. I wasn't certified to train Scrum, but I taught a lot of it. I trained XP. Well, they didn't have a certification trainer. Kanban, I started Lean-Kanban University with David Anderson. So if it has to do with knowledge work based around building products or maintaining products, whether it's software or not software. So the curriculum looks like a blend at one level of like SAFe and Scrum and Kanban in terms of the content, but I organize it differently than anything else. And it's not based on them. It's based on flow, lean theory, constraints, human-centered development, design thinking, things, systems thinking, things like that. So but it covers the whole scope. What I don't cover, it's easier to talk about what I don't cover, is DevOps, because I'm not an expert in DevOps, and there's actually lots of good DevOps stuff out there. But I use value streams, a lot of innovative product management. I was fabulous in the 80s building products for people that they just loved, was very innovative. So I teach that as well. So it pretty much covers the whole scope of things, but is organized differently.
Let me get back a little bit. You said that you could have retired, but you've chosen to take a different path. And I'm wondering what made you think that it almost sounds like you're thinking that it's a lack of knowledge that is out there.
Yeah, I think it is. Well, one confession. Some people could say I've got OCD when it comes to my work. So there's some compulsion here, I got to admit. Uh, well, there's this book I read years ago by Paul Pilsner called Unlimited Wealth. And he talks about, and it's a misappropriate term now, but it was appropriate when he wrote this book he calls the difference between what we can do, what is being done by a few people, versus what is done by the masses. This difference, he calls it the technology gap. And it's an interesting concept. Go back a few hundred years, your wealth was based on like how much land you had, how many people you had under your control, maybe how many weapons or horses or things like that. In the industrial age, however, that started changing. The better technology you had, the more wealth you had. For example, and he wasn't a non-environmentalist, but he uses gas as an example, and it's a good one that, back in the 70s, we had this shortage of gasoline. Oil was getting depleted, people were predicting, but new technology enables us to pull more out. When I was growing up, my dad's car got 7 miles to the gallon. My car gets about 30 miles to the gallon. So we've got many more times oil, and that's what he meant. Technology adds wealth to us. Now, in the information age, it's even more because I can give somebody information and I still have it, and they have it. So it's a multiplicative effect. So he calls it technology gap. Your wealth is equal to the resources times some exponential factor of your technology. So I call it the capability gap. And what I believe is there are two or three things out there that are massively wrong. One is people think things are way more complex than they really are. I've studied Ellie Goldratt a lot. So, and when you look at how things are doing, it looks really complex and horrible and all that. But there are two main reasons for that in my mind, or three, I guess. One is people don't know in general a core set of what I've heard called the physics of flow, like how knowledge work can happen. A lot of people dispute it even exists. That doesn't make us deterministic. You drive on the road and you're not deterministic, I hope, because you'll be in an accident if you are. But that doesn't mean you don't know what to do. And it's kind of like that. So that's why I use like lean flow, things like that. So that's one thing that's not being used. The other thing is training is just, in my mind, unaffordable now. So taking advantage of modern technology, Zoom and things like that, Figma, FigJam, I've been using Lucid at times. All of these can drastically lower the cost if you do training over time, because you can have lots more students than it's not that people are overcharging you if you're in a 12 student class, but it costs a lot for them to put it on. If you do it remotely, it can be lower cost. So I'm trying to lower the cost, make it affordable, make it more effective, because it's great. You take a workshop. How many of you have taken a workshop? And this is so cool. This instructor is so great and the material is so great. And all that's true. And then you go back and you try to apply it, and it's like, what the? You don't know how. Because that's the other problem. People don't integrate coaching, how you coach the materials in the workshops with the materials. And this is important because you can't teach it separate. You lose an opportunity because when you teach it with it, you actually can talk. And here's how you convey this particular concept. So I think this capabilities concept, the gap as I call it, is the issue. And I don't know, a combination of compulsion I don't seem to have much control over, and I like to help people. It led me to just, I'm going with this and I'm going to figure it out. And to be candid, I thought I would be a lot further along after 6 months I'm a lot further along than I thought I'd ever get, actually. But It's still in the kind of building stage. But I'm excited about it. People who are in it are very excited about it. So I think it's a potentially big thing.
I have to admit, the last training on any agile matter that I attended was 2 years ago. Because to me, it's always I can't really digest everything that I get to learn in a training.
That's right.
So if a trainer would tell me like, "Hey, so you need to ship more frequently," I'm like, okay, shipping more frequently. So I need to find what is keeping me away from shipping more frequently. Is that technology? Is it anything else? Is that process? Is that power? What is it? And then I have to make an argument on how to change it. I have to onboard the right. And by that time, like half a year went by in most organizations already. And that is just like one sentence out of a 2-day course. And to me, I can very much relate with what you said in the beginning, is that people making things more complex than they really are. The way that I teach about agility is very much from, okay, ship more frequently, learn from those more frequent shippings, right? And aim for more flow in your organization. And when you do those three things, basically you're becoming a very agile organization. But it doesn't really help. So I can't make a course out of it, unfortunately, because more frequent shipping means different things in different contexts, and the
Exactly.
solutions mean different things in different techniques, technology, whatever. In different contexts, learning means different things. It's in one organization. It could be having the data you could get the information out of. On the other hand, it could be get a hold of the three main customers that you're having. So it means very different things. And so I'm always looking for context and not so much for the single source of truth.
Well, that's a great example. Actually, now you just added a third thing. I was going to say two things, but a third thing.
Oh, yeah.
First of all, when you're in a course all day or even half a day, it's just too much. You can't absorb more than about an hour. I mean, studies have shown this. They talk about how after a day of training you lose 80%, but I think what it is you retain the 1 hour. That's about all you can handle. So when you're given all this, it's interesting, it's cool, it goes in your back of your head, but it's not that useful and you forget it. And when you're talking about a certification course, it's worse because now you're focused on information. But the other thing you said is really interesting. Yes, you need to do certain things like release more often, have flow, and all that. And yet everybody needs to do it differently. But here's the consistency. Everybody needs to release more often. Everybody needs to have flow. Everybody needs to take the feedback and do it. Those are what I call capabilities. And something we discovered at Net Objectives, I don't know, around 2005, 6, or 7, was that if you took 100 different companies and you looked at what they needed to do individually, what is that? Not how, but what? What does that company need? What? And what we found was about 80% of the 100 companies would have the same 80% capabilities. Planning, improving the backlog, how to talk to customers, value stream analysis. Conceptually, they're similar. Implementation, they're quite different. So what I started working on, I guess it was around 2006, 2007, was what capabilities are there that these 80% of 100 companies would need. And that's actually what Amplio is, one of the things Amplio is based on. It turns out there are about 50 at this organization level, and there are about 30 at the team level. And what's cool is those are abstract. So most of those capabilities are needed by most companies. And you could do a diagnosis to see, well, what are we not doing? Which ones are important? But you implement them with something that I call Alexandrian patterns. A lot of people are familiar with Christopher Alexander. He's the guy who wrote Timeless Way of Building, a pattern language. Strongly influenced the XP crowd. Ward Cunningham and Kent Beck and those people were very familiar with his work. There was a Hillside group, they called it, where they talked about patterns and stuff. But patterns aren't just solutions to recurring problems. They're solutions to recurring problems in a context. Most of the patterns I see out there are just a whole bunch of the solution here, solution there, solution there. You can't put it together. You can't tailor it. So Amplio, and by the way, I'm not trying to sell Amplio with this because anybody could take the concepts I'm talking about and apply them yourself. Look at planning. Oh, I need to get planning. What's the intention of planning? Well, there's big room planning, there's sprint planning, there's the way Kanban does it. You don't need Amplio to do that. I'm trying to convey the concept that there's this capability, and then there are any number of ways of doing it. The disciplined agile browser has a lot of this stuff in it, although it's not organized this way. So that's what I'm trying to do. But then the last thing you said is there is no right answer or one way to do things. And I'll admit, I was, what would you call it? I guess you could say I was a lean disciple, or a little dogmatic perhaps about lean. Because I learned lean in the 80s, and I mean, it was wonderful. It is wonderful. But it wasn't about, I don't know, 10 years ago, maybe longer, 15 years ago. I realized that no, there's all this other stuff that you can't explain with lean. So it's integration of a lot of ideas is what you want. So that's kind of how I'm working on it also with Amplio.
I'm wondering, when you teach courses, when people would enroll in your course, how do you make sure that? So I get it. You would teach patterns. Is that correct?
Well,
Like
this
I'm trying to connect the challenges your attendees would have to the material that you're giving them,
that's right.
because I see that as a big challenge for most of the trainers, including me, to
It's a,
really serve them
yeah,
answers to the questions.
it's actually a big challenge because what I'd always done in the past was I built the curriculum, I had all the materials, and then I had a well-defined way of going through it. And that's fine when you do a 2 or 3 day workshop because everybody's starting at the same time. But I'm trying to create an ongoing education program, which means people come and go and leave and all that at different paces and at different levels. In other words, you join Amplio University anytime you want to, and you pay for 6 months. And then, like I say, people up usually or often. So how do you handle that? That was the biggest problem I had, actually. So what we had been doing, what we still do, is we record all the sessions. But then what I had to do a few months ago, because I was getting some kind of late arrivals, so to speak. And what's also worse is I've got some people who are like really senior people. I've had some executives in the workshop. I have a variety of people who are responsible for transformation of several large companies, or of one, they're in one large company. But so what I have now is an onboarding process. Like, how do you get the basic thing I said that was missing, like the physics of flow? So there's about 8 videos you watch. But we meet 3 times a week. I believe in short sessions. So we have like a Monday morning, a Tuesday morning, and a Wednesday afternoon. And actually, the Tuesday morning is open to the public, although you have to register, but there's no charge. And I've decided to have that there because it's a way to promote, but also promote me and promote the knowledge. And the other thing we have that I've started doing is we have other sessions when we need to, when somebody wants a consulting session. We've done some consulting sessions where somebody brings in their problem. And this is what's so cool. As a whole group, all the people in there help the guy as consultants would. Okay. And this is a great way to learn because we're co-creating as we go. So that's the other way. So newbies who come in, they have a combination of here's a path to learn. I also have a one-on-one conversation with them because I want to know what they're up to. It's just about an hour, but then they can have a consulting session on their topic. And these are recorded, but they're not public, so confidentiality is not an issue. So, but this is what needs to happen in this industry, and it isn't. I'm the only guy I know that's working on this. Some people are starting to do longer-term trainings, but I'm talking it's ongoing education, continuing education. So you go to a session and oh, that was interesting. Maybe I can try that. So you try that. Maybe you can't do it next week. So you do it 2 weeks later or whenever it is. And then you say, yeah, that was a good idea, but it didn't work. Here's the problem I have. And that's the whole idea. You learn in the workplace, not in the workshop. You learn ideas in the workshop, but you really learn how to use it in the workplace because that's almost the only way to do it. And if people have troubles conveying things, they ask me. I'm really a good coach. I wasn't born a good coach. At Net Objectives, I had some people that were natural coaches. I was not one of them. I mean, I was horrible. I don't know. That might be too strong, but I wasn't good. I'll put it that way. Back in the 90s. And I realized I needed to change and shift. And it took me a while, but I know what it's like. I know what it takes to become a good coach by having been a not so good one and getting better. So that's integrated into the whole thing. So yeah, this is an ongoing. I won't say it's an experiment anymore because we now have all the pieces in place. There's another thing we add to it is we have a built-in support system. And by the way, again, I'm not trying to sell Amplio because you can do this yourself. What I mean by a built-in support system, checklists and templates are really useful. I used to use them when I would consult back, before I joined the PMI, because I would find myself, I'd be talking to a client and I'd going through things and they were getting it. It was all great. And then somebody said, well, what about this? And the reality was I'd forgotten about that. But, I have an ego as much as anybody. So I would say, oh, yeah, I was just getting to that. Thank you. Liar. Uh, so I realized, oh, you do this all the time. You need to make a checklist just so you can go through and see, not to follow it, but to remind me of things. So I highly recommend doing stuff like that. It's useful. I mean, in the pressure of talking to a client or anybody, it's easy to forget things. Your mind.
100%.
So this whole thing is part of the support system and part of the education.
When I started my career in the Agile community, so I have a background in production engineering, so I'm coming from that. People call it Lean. When I studied, we called it Toyota Production System. So that's where I came from. So when I went into the Agile community, everybody used Agile and Scrum Master role as an easy entrance.
That's right.
To get into tech jobs without any tech knowledge. Same here. I'm not a programmer. I have no clue about programming. I could set up a factory for you, but I have no clue about programming. And everyone was like very much looking for the right way of doing things. So everyone was like, so how do I run a retrospective? Oh, you get those 5 steps here. How do you plan a sprint? So here is a blueprint on how to plan a sprint. And even now you go on LinkedIn and everyone's selling their 5-step success program to whatever problem you're having. And so what I did back then is I deviated away from it, and I was like, okay, so I need to come up with answers, and I need to, like, those blueprints are not helping anymore, and I was completely neglecting them and putting them away in a box, and like, I don't want to talk about it. Like, I need to acquire the skill to come up with the right solutions at the time that where I need it, right? Like build a bridge when you're at the river. But then I experienced the same thing that you just mentioned. Like I start to repeat, I start to come up with patterns, and I start to forget about them, and the quality of my work really dropped down. So the pendulum pretty much swang to oblivion there, and I needed to come back a little bit. And I wonder if that's the same thing that we see with agility at the moment, that there was this movement on decentralized organizations, on flat hierarchies, no managers at all. All the projects are bad. Nobody's doing project management. Project managers are bad as well. And then everybody wanted to be a coach, not a manager. Everyone wanted to be a Scrum Master or a product owner, but not a project manager.
Right.
And now we see Scrum Masters, product owners being laid off because it didn't quite deliver what was promised in books, articles, and whatnot. And nowadays, I see many more people going for the PMI. Just today, I got an email that PMI and Agile Alliance are working together. And I see more and more people going for the more classical approach, earning those foundational project management badges, so to say. I don't want to go too deep into the project management area here. Where I wanted to go was, do you think there is a shift in the Agile community towards more the basics of things, like lean, templates, project management, knowledge on a very foundational level?
Yeah, I would say yes and no because the foundation has not changed, and the foundation of
Hmm.
Agile is flawed, and it's been
It's
flawed.
flawed.
Yes.
How is that?
Okay, well, let's look at lean for a second because you mentioned you let's turn the ringer off. You mentioned your experience with the TPS. Okay, so one of the things about the TPS is it's an holistic approach, right? You look at from the customer makes an order, or we're building something. It's not always the customer makes an order. We're building something for the customer. Oh, we want a luxury, high-end, environmentally friendly car. That was somewhat the rationale of the Lexus. So we're going to build that, and then all the way it goes through. And you look at it holistically, and you recognize that you can't build one piece separate from another piece separate from another piece. It's the whole thing. You've got to look at the whole. Well, that doesn't exist so much in the Agile space, not in the manifesto. It talks about software development, it talks about teams. There is no role for management except to let the teams do what they want to. There's no talking about addressing critical stakeholders, which are not just people in the company, not just the customers. They could be the sponsors, they could be government agencies, it could be all sorts of things. So, why did it work so well at the beginning? Because I wasn't at the original Snowbird, but I was there in 2011 when they had the 10th year anniversary because of what I'd done with Lean-Agile University. So, and I'd been around since '99 with XP. The reason the manifesto was so great, and it was great, because none of us knew what this thing was. We didn't have a name for it. And as Edgar Schein says, we don't think and talk about what we see what we think and talk about. So now we had a name, and we called it Agile. And even though I thought the manifesto was flawed, and I actually never signed it, but that's another story. It was useful because it allowed us to coalesce. But without systems thinking, a lot of problems happen. And what's happened then, without a foundation of lean and flow and theory of constraints, the physics of flow, as I've heard it called, there's nothing to coalesce on and agree. Look at LinkedIn. You got dozens of different opinions about everything. And nobody tries to go back to what I would call a first principle, which is something that's observable and stands on its own. Here's an example. Multitasking lowers productivity. Here's another one. Delays in feedback increases risk and waste. These are just so. They're not my opinion. It's the way it is. Now, how you solve it, there's guidance and there are frameworks and things like that. But the first principles, this underlying science of what's going on, is more or less on the fringe. I mean, there are a lot of people besides me doing this. Peter Merrill, Wolfram Mueller, Steve Tendon. I mean, they're Cliff Berg with Agile too. There are a lot of people who are looking at this, but none of the popular frameworks have it. And I was the main force of it in disciplined Agile, and I'm not there anymore. So what you had is this pendulum going back and forth. And it's funny because we were doing projects and then Lean and Agile came back. Now we're going back to the projects. Why? Oh, we need discipline. No, no, no. We need fundamental science. We need an engineering for success. Play on the name of my company, Success Engineering. That was the whole idea. We want success. But it takes an engineering approach. And I don't mean building bridges like you see with civil engineering. Knowledge work is not civil engineering. But there's an engineering attitude that's useful. So I think we've gone the other way. And by the way, there are projects. The worst thing you can do is, though, if you have a product, run it like it's a project. But there are projects. They got well-defined starts, well-defined ends. You may or may not know how to solve them. Projects are not always deterministic. Almost nothing is deterministic. And that's the other thing. And you talk about the history. It's like people think waterfall. Well, waterfall is flawed, obviously, more than agile. But we've embraced most people weren't around, I guess, in 99, 2000, 2001. There was a reason for Agile. The Standish group had come up with all these studies about how all this stuff was being built that nobody used, that projects were not on time or within budget and all that. And people were saying, oh, Agile can fix this. And now you say, no, there's no way you can do that. And they point to the Iron Triangle, which is also fundamentally flawed. Iron Triangle is not accurate, never been accurate, and is a horrible way to think about things. Tom Gilb and I wrote a dissertation, a little mini book on it. We used the Penta, where there are 5 things. And I can give references, by the way, so if people want to look at these things, we've got it
Yeah,
written out
yeah.
in public on the web. So what you got is basically all of a sudden the Titanic, the iceberg hit the Titanic on the starboard side of the ship. So let's go run over to the port side of the ship. And they're rearranging deck chairs. They're not getting to the real issues. And again, it's because of this capabilities gap. People don't recognize the science, they don't recognize what's needed. And of course, jobs are getting lost because the bloom has come off the rose. And it's going to be an interesting year, I think, this next year for a lot of reasons. I'm not getting into politics, but obviously things are going to change, at least in the United States, in both the economy and how jobs are. And there's a lot of discussions about jobs, being able to have H-1B and things like that. So,
And I
but
can
if there
tell you
was,
we're having the same discussions here in Europe as well.
yeah, even if those weren't present, you're going to see change. I've been in the business space of IT and other things since 1980, and 2024 was the first year. I mean, sometimes employment went down maybe because of the economy, but in a good economic year with low unemployment, first time IT jobs have been lost. It's never happened before. And people think we're going to recover. No, no, when you have an apex, it looks like this. At this point, it still looks like it's just slowed down. It's not going to recover. It's going to get worse. AI is going to make programmers, and I'm specifically saying programmers, more productive. There's no question you can program faster with AI. And a lot of people are going to mess it up, though, because people are using AI, individuals are using AI as how they can program faster. But if AI isn't used to also create the business architecture and the system architecture, which it can be, I just don't see many people talking about it, you're going to make a real mess. That, well, maybe AI can fix the mess, but I'm talking about across a large organization. It can be bad.
I guess to roll out an AI on, like, to have it on a business scale, you would really need to have the correct data and the correct format in order to profitably run it, right?
That's right. And it can be done. And some people are doing it or talking about it. But the thing to remember about AI, first of all, there's no such thing as artificial intelligence. I was following MIT, the MIT Artificial Intelligence Group when I was in high school in the late 60s. Um, there's been hype about it for years and years. And I'm not saying AI is hype. AI is amazing. Okay, I use it in a lot of different ways. In fact, I'm taking all my books and my I'm taking my books on process anyway, and the stuff I've done in Amplio University, and I'm actually sucking it into an AI engine, so you can get things about Amplio and Tom Gilb's work and others. And the reason is AI really, as most people talk about it like ChatGPT or something like that, it's a large language model. It goes out there and it distills what's out there. But what's out there is mostly mediocre to crap, in my opinion, on things. The most important, I mentioned the capabilities. Well, there are 4 or 5 or 6 capabilities that are absolutely essential for success in my mind. There are 4 or 5 that aren't out there. You can't find them because it's buried in the mess. What LLMs don't do is they don't unlearn. So all the bad stuff that got put out on LinkedIn 20 years ago is still out there. That's why the private LLMs are important to have your own. Here's my database and all that. So
And even that has a problem in itself, because most of the content that an AI is consuming now is organically made data that the AI is consuming. But in the future, like the AIs out there, the agencies out there will produce more data faster than we as humans can do. So at some point, they will consume their own output,
that's right.
which leads
That's an
to a
interesting point.
whole spectrum of other problems.
Yeah. So there are 2 points here that are really important, and I think I need to mention one of them first. So there's a huge amount of solutions, an infinite number of solutions out there, and that looks overwhelming. So some people, what they do, like Scrum, takes the attitude, well, let's just have a thin framework, simple framework, be purposely incomplete, be empirically based, feedback and all that, and work. But it's simplistic because people don't figure out what's there. Also, a lot of people say Scrum is not prescriptive, but Well, you got to have sprints, you got to have cross-functional teams. It's prescriptive. It just doesn't tell you exactly how to do its prescription.
And
So
it's also very prescriptive once you attend a course, because the trainer is not able to tell you the best way to do it in your organization.
that's right.
So you will get taught a very generic approach. You will get to, like, let's take a sprint review, for example. You will get taught, like, okay, so everyone, like, grab post-its, and then you have a canvas here, and you create the post-its and brainstorm and whatnot. But let's say you're running a B2B SaaS company that is highly depending on, like, customer data, and you want to see what the data looks like. You want to see trends, you want to see patterns. You don't want to have stickies on the wall, right? But once you attend a course and someone asks you, like, how do you do a sprint retrospective, you go like, hey, that is the one format that I got taught.
That's right. Yeah, every course, every it's like that's what you taught, that's what you do now. And that is a problem. And there's no way to vary that. And then they say, well, we're not really immutable, you can change it. No, immutability means you can't change it. Then you're doing something you weren't even trained on. So this is the other key thing. I talked about coaching and conveying being integrated is important. But very few people are trained in the human condition. People are kind of, at first you could say, really weird. You ever say something, I'll let you actually, it goes both ways. You ever say something to somebody that you meant innocently, and boy, did they ever get plugged in?
All the time,
Or,
every day on LinkedIn.
or vice versa. Somebody says something innocent, what a jerk. And then later you realize you misunderstood them. That's because the way our brains are wired is they have this automaticity to it, this automatic response. Boy, if you don't know what I'm talking about, next time you drive and somebody cuts you off, notice if what happens is, I wonder, that guy should cut me off. That was a dangerous move. I think I should let this guy know that it was a dangerous move. So there. Or it's just so there. See, there's no thinking. It just happens. Now, that doesn't get you off the hook because you're responsible for your actions. But when you start becoming aware that you have this automatic response, and it's typically fed by ego and fear, once you become aware of that, and you know other people do this, you can learn to disengage. And you can learn to coach. But if you don't know this, you get into these things you see on LinkedIn all the time. Well, you can never coach well if you're at the effect of this kind of thing. Now, knowing it conceptually doesn't give you a lot of input right away. It takes a while. But if you don't know it, you never learn it. So that's another thing that's required. So there's also this thing called, cognitive overload. Like you spend the day in a classroom and, oh my goodness. So the idea is little bits, little learning, little bits, little learning. And here's both the good news and the bad news. And this depends on you whether it's good or bad. I mean, individually. The bad news is AI and getting quick answers is probably going to decimate the Scrum Master career path because you won't need one. Or maybe you do need one, but management and HR will think you don't because AI is being sold that you don't need one.
It's funny you mention HR and management, because I very much believe that AI will also replace the management layer to a certain extent.
Well, again, let's go back to Lean. One of the big things of Lean is visual controls, where you have visibility in all your work. And it's amazing how many people rediscover or invent, visual controls, visibility is good. This was a cornerstone of Toyota for at least 50 years. More, I'm sure. So yes, when you get AI where it can, and this is where AI is really powerful. And in fact, this is another thing I'm working on with Amplio. Imagine if somehow, I hate to say the name of this tool, so you're going to get an experience of the reactivation I was talking about. I'm talking about Jira. Okay. Jira, as it's implemented, is really horrible almost all the time, and it leads to lots of bad things. But if you configured it properly, and we do have somebody in Emory University, who's a Jira expert, he and I are working on this, where you can have it where Jira supports you in creating value, not holds you back by looking at little tickets and things. Then you could have AI analyze that, do an analysis of how my people should be organized, make the work automatically visible across the organization. And now you have what's called a visual control, which explains how it's being done and what the work looks like. And you don't need managers as much anymore. You still need managers because there's something LLMs and AI can't do, and that is to create. AI is great for integration. AI is great for following directions, but it's not truly intelligence. And so the good news or the bad news is Scrum Master jobs, I think, are going to get decimated. So how is that good? For those people who want to learn how to think instead of how to follow, and it's scary at times because you're putting your career in your hands, your butt is on the line, so to speak. There are not that many of them now, and they will be in more demand in the future, not in less demand. And it takes a while to learn, but I think 6 months. See, this is the other thing. What I call the agile industrial complex has gaslight us so much to think it takes years and years to be competent, but that's because they're not doing the physics of flow. Theory by itself is useless, true, but experience without theory is expensive or blind, depending on who you talk to. Deming says it's expensive. Kant says it's blind. Da Vinci talks about it's like having a rudderless ship. So without this theory I've been talking about, it takes years to learn by trying and all that. But if you know the theory, and it doesn't take long because you already have the insights. You already know what multitasking is like. You already know what delays are like. You already know what working beyond your limits are.
Or at least you know how it feels to
You know
be
how it
overwhelmed
feels.
by multitasking.
Yeah, so we have this intuitive knowledge that just needs to be brought out, and we need to talk about it. And when you do that, people can become very competent. But you have to, quickly, in months, not years. But you have to be willing to take responsibility. And a lot of people would rather follow. And maybe people will get shaken up enough where they'll start wanting to learn how to think. But I hate to say this, but I think the vast majority of people will not do that. So I'm gearing toward those people who want to say, hey, this is a challenge. I want to learn how to think. I want to think for myself. I want to learn from other people. You know, one of my favorite quotes, I think it was Will Rogers said, some people learn by reading. Some people learn by observation. The rest of them have to pee on the electric fence for themselves. So you don't have to,
My life pretty much consists of me peeing at
who
many
has
hundred
not done
fences.
that? Well, see, that's one of the things I love about Amplio University. So when I started this 3 years ago, I mean, I've developed dozens, if not hundreds, of workshops. I built the DA Discipline Agile Value Stream Consultant Workshop, which is kind of the premier PMI Agile workshop, which is unfortunately getting phased out. They're taking some of it, but mostly it's a loss. I'm kind of sad about that. But so I built lots and lots of workshops. But the thing is, it's much more complicated than here's the knowledge, go do it. And what I have found is one of the reasons I also do it like over a 6-month period of just 2-3 hours a week. And you don't have to even spend that much because you can do it at your own pace. But is that people can avoid overcoming cognitive overload. See, like look at Wikipedia as an example. That's a model I like to think about. Let's say overnight there were twice as many entries in Wikipedia as it is now. Would it be any harder to use? No. It's got a search engine. It's got a way to give you the information you want at the depth you want. See, it's not the amount of information. Having a simple Scrum guide doesn't do any good, really. It's the rate at which you disseminate it that's important. Well, Scrum forces you to disseminate very little. But what if you had a full-blown system that you could disseminate in little bits, little layers, just when you needed it? It's like just-in-time information. Maybe the way we train ought to be like the way Toyota built systems. Little bits, just in time, remove the delays, detect when something's wrong. It's actually an interesting metaphor. It's not even a metaphor. It actually would match. Come from a systems thinking approach. That's what I'm building it with Amplio. It's just, well, if it's been done, I don't know who did it, so I'm kind of recreating this. But here's where I was trying to get with this. What's cool is the people, we are now in the co-creation part of things. In fact, by the time this video is or audio is available, I'll be starting next week. I'm starting this thing I call the Amplio Capabilities and Patterns Project. As hard as I work, I realize, Al, this job is way too big for me. And so what I'm actually doing is I'm putting what's here out in the public domain with Creative Commons, and I'm going to have part of what's going on in the university and in the community of practice, the free track in the university, is have people define and build these capabilities and the patterns to implement them. I think it's a cool idea because then you can try it out. Hey, what's he talking about? He says it's not that complicated once you jump in. He says, because I don't want you to trust me. I don't want you know, I joke when I start a workshop, I always say, don't ever trust a consultant. And everybody laughs at that. But I caveat it here, say, I don't mean don't trust their intentions. Most consultants have good intentions. Some don't, but most do. I have good intentions. But I may be wrong. And if you don't understand it yourself, then you're trusting that I'm right. You're not understanding it. So it's like giving a taste of ice cream. You could talk about it, but the best thing is, hey, taste this, see if you like it. So that's kind of my latest thing because it'll help me build this faster. And I've identified the capabilities. And if you were to ask me, I could answer you, but it's not all documented, and I'm putting it into an AI system. So I think this is the future, and people who want to join this. And again, you don't need me, you don't need Amplio, but find a mentor. Find somebody who's basing their work on flow, lean, theory of constraints. And this precludes SAFe and it precludes Scrum. And most Kanban, I would say, it precludes, unfortunately.
And when people still want to reach out and still find you and still want to get in touch with you and not go somewhere else, where do people can reach out or join a conversation?
The best way, follow me on LinkedIn. It's Al Shalloway. Send me an email, al.shalloway@successengineering.works. And I'll give, successengineering.works is my website. If you go there and you look, or you can just do successengineering.works/ACOP, it'll take you to the community of practice, which is free.
If you send me the links, I will put them
I'll
all
send you the
into the
links
show
for
notes.
this. And I have hours and hours and hours of free webinars. I don't put everything out there. Some of the university materials, those are private to the university. But I must have, I don't know, 50 hours of videos on YouTube. So I'll send you all that, the community, which is free, and the YouTube and the university stuff.
But you also have like a two-pager that I really, really
Oh
love.
yeah, I'll send you that. And that's all you can use. It summarizes
that
this
is
whole
really
science.
good. Yeah.
Yeah, the summarization. I'll send you that where you can download it. And I recommend joining the university. I mean, excuse me. Well, I recommend joining the university, yes, because that'd be nice. But join the community of practice because you can join, and what's going to happen is you're going to get an email from me weekly. And if you're you can't shut that email off except by unenrolling from the university. I mean, from the community of practice. But then you'll get insights on what we did, and it's a good way to start when you want to, and you'll get access to some good information. So, yeah, check that out, and I'll give Benjamin the link so he can put it in with us.
I will. Last question for the pod. Every podcast up to now gets a AI generated song about the podcast's content. And I ask my guest what type of genre they wish for. So what is your genre?
Well, I like almost every kind of music. I'm not that big a jazz fan, but I'll tell you who came to mind. Bruce Springsteen. And I'll tell you why, because I am a rock nut. I've seen him, I don't know, a dozen times. My wife is even crazier than me about him. Well, she's crazier than me generally. That's a good thing. We've been together for, I don't know, 36 years. But I'll tell you why. And this is, I think, a real heartfelt lesson. I go to Bruce because I love his music. But I really love the way the man is himself. He's out there putting out his beliefs and meaning into the world. And when I watch him play, I love the music. Well, actually, there was when he did his experiment where he left the E Street Band and all that. I actually didn't like his music, but I still like going to his concerts. Uh, and my wife liked that more, and I kind of like it a little bit. But when you see an artist create and live out of his heart, for me, it reminds me I can do that. And I remind the listeners here, you can do that. The world is out there trying to beat you down and tell you you can't do that. But don't listen to that crap, because everybody can do that. I don't care where you are. I don't care what you do. I know people that had low jobs that people might dismiss. And that's up to the person who's adding the value. There are great people who clean floors. There are great people who manage any task that some people think is below other people. That's just the bullshit of elitism. You bring your value to the thing and you'll do fine. And you'll do better probably than you think you might. This has been my life lesson, is that not letting myself, see, I'm usually my own worst enemy a lot of times. Well, don't listen to that bad part. Listen, it's the story of the wolves. Which one, the good wolf, the bad wolf, which one wins? Well, the one you feed. Feed the good wolf. So there's a huge opportunity. I'll close with this last quote. I think it was Emerson. Now, like all times, is a good time if you know what to do. So I hope I've given you some thoughts on what to do, and trust in yourself and believe in yourself.
Is indeed a really good quote. I'm going to steal that probably.
Make sure I got the right attribution, but I think it was Emerson.
I'll look it up. Thank you so much for coming on to the show. I really, really enjoyed it.
Yeah,
I
same
have like
here,
a couple of thought experiments that I wanted to bring up, but I didn't because we were running out of time. Maybe on a second show. Thank you so
Definitely.
much
Anytime
again.
you want. Anytime you want. This is great. This is really good.
Alrighty. Thank you. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye.
That's it. Thank you so much for tuning in. This podcast is part of my consultancy startup that runs by the same name. Whether it's applying AI, agile, adopting new technology, or exploring new markets, our analysis services help you to stay on track and deliver measurable results. Don't just trust your gut when it comes to organizing work. Trust your gut and the ones from your colleagues. And data, of course. Within just a week, we're able to give you a comprehensive insight into what drives your needle forward. Hit us up. That's it. See you next week. Bye-bye.